Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending our talk, Language Corpora and Community Output, the Ende Lanuage Corpus. I'm excited to show you the culmination of Professor Lindsay and many other linguists and researchers' work in the Ende community, as well as walk you through the notable outcomes that it has produced. The roadmap for this presentation is as follows. I'll begin with a brief introduction, provide a background of the Ende community, and then I'll speak about the Ende Language Project, its beginning and its role in creating the Ende corpus. I'll then talk about the benefits of language documentation with respect to the outcomes that it has had for both the academic and local communities, as well as address the barriers that documentation can sometimes pose. Lastly, I'll conclude my presentation with a summary of what we have accomplished thus far. Many communities have had the unfortunate reality of facing the consequences of language endangerment and language shift, as more and more languages become extinct and the world continues to see a loss in cultural and intellectual diversity as a result of this. It's thus important to recognize the role that language preservation and revitalization activities play and their increased recognition by linguists, specifically within documenting languages through the creation of linguistic corpora. However, online archives that are created as a means of facilitating collected data to a broader audience are often catered specifically to a linguistic audience, where linguists and researchers tend to be the primary users. Therefore, if we want to ensure the survival of languages throughout the world, it's incredibly important to create materials that are able to physically represent the language and culture for academic and speaker communities. Our corpus, the Corpus of Ende and other Pahatori River languages, is one of the largest collections of auditory and visual data for any language in southern Papua New Guinea. In addition to existing as an online corpus meant to secure linguistic record for the Ende community, it has also developed a means of serving the speaker community at hand as well. Ende is a small language spoken in the South Lai district of the Western Province of Papua New Guinea, an area which is known for a large amount of linguistic diversity, albeit low documentation rates. Ende has an estimated speech community of 700 to 1,000 people. It is a member of the Pahatori River language family and is spoken primarily in the villages of Limo, Malam, and Kinkin. Surrounding languages include Ago, Adi, Kawam, and Tame. The data for the corpus was collected primarily in Limo, which is a migratory village of about 300 people, many of whom are multilingual. However, Ende is the primary language of the community and is spoken in all domains except for schooling, which is conducted in English. Figure 1 shows a map of the significant Pahatori River language populations in the region. The Ende Language Project is an ongoing program that was initiated by the Ende community, specifically by Pastor Warama Kurupel in 2003 as a means of promoting literacy within the community and preserving the linguistic and cultural heritage of Ende. It has since grown to include more community members as well as an international team of linguists. Data for the corpus was collected as an extension of this project and has since produced one of the largest collections of auditory and visual data for the region. The resulting collection includes 876 linguistic items, as well as 116 hours of audio, 54 hours of video, 5,000 words for the Ende English lexicon, as well as other physical representations of the corpus that are manifested through books, hymnals, and a documentary. The corpus is archived in Paradisec, or the Pacific and Regional Archive for Digital Sources in Endangered Cultures, which is a digital archive with a well-established framework that is able to safeguard digital, audio, text, and visual materials. By depositing the collection in Paradisec, we give interested users easy access to the corpus and the ability to download items and collection-level metadata. The current collection contains 876 linguistic items, 306 with video, and 780 with audio. Notably, the corpus follows a hierarchical structure, meaning that each item is a folder that contains inside of it all raw data files and any associated annotation files. Each item in the corpus is given a unique identifier and citation information that then links it to any associated annotations and metadata. Figure 2 is an example of the collection page in Paradisec. On the left, you'll see the description of the collection, while on the right, you can see a list of all of the deposited items. Figure 3 shows the details of a particular item and provides the ID, title, and description on the left, while lists the raw data contained within the item on the right. The unique identifier also reflects multiple dimensions, these being mode, language, spontaneity, and genre, which are displayed in the name given to each item. Mode refers to the mode of delivery, such as spoken, read, or written forms of data. Language refers to the language that is being elicited. Spontaneity refers to whether the data was spontaneous, prompted, or elicited. Genre can be categorized into elicited, narratives, songs, formulaic discourse, or interactive discourse. By using this method of file naming, items in the corpus are made easily identifiable and users are more easily able to search for them. For example, an item such as this, named REEE001, refers to read Ende elicited elicitation item number 001. Additionally, the Ende corpus documents the linguistic practices and traditions of the Ende community, as well as provides a comprehensive account of the speech community. Further, it meets the best practice methods laid out by Thieberger and colleagues for creating a digital archive and supports derivative outcomes for the academic and speaker communities. A notable outcome of the corpus is the amount of data that has been archived. The collection currently contains a large amount of video and audio recordings, transcriptions, translations, and interlinearizations, with more items being added as we continue this process. As of now, nearly half of the 116 hours of data have been transcribed, nearly a quarter have been translated, and nearly 5% have been interlinearized. This is reflected in Figure 5, which shows the different types of data that have been deposited, as well as the amount and the duration given both in hours and minutes. Items that have been transcribed or translated have .eaf time-aligned transcription files, which are also provided in .text format for longevity. The items with interlinear glossings have accompanying .flextext and .eaf time-aligned glosses at the morpheme level as well. However, merely depositing data in an online archive is simply not enough. The archive ideally meets best practice method criteria and supports derivative outcomes that serve both the academic and speaker communities. With respect to an online archive in and of itself, Thieberger and colleagues have laid out best practice methods for compiling a digital archive collection. They lay out conventions which analyze language corpora in terms of the material and data upon which they are based, specifically in terms of accessibility, quality, and quantity, and provide the framework for an ideal language corpus. Accessibility refers to the corpus being stored in a non-proprietary format that is easily accessible to multiple user groups across a public domain. Quality refers to the assessment of the archive with respect to the nature and the amount of stored information, the structure of the corpus, the quality of the stored metadata, the nature of linguistic annotations to the primary data, as well as the structural linking of raw data with their associated annotations. Quantity refers to the evaluation of the archive in terms of the amount of text and the number and diversity of the deposited items. The Ende Lanuage Corpus meets this criteria by being deposited in an open access repository that guarantees long-term and easy accessibility to the collection and data for multiple user groups. The corpus contains a large amount of background and descriptive metadata for all items. As language documentation becomes a growing subfield of linguistics, it is beneficial in that it produces both academic and community outputs. Further, it is essential that the data that is collected be made available for other parties, such as primary data like field notes and recordings that can be made available beyond the scope of the research team so that further analysis and scrutiny may be carried out. Another benefit of documentation is that it is able to provide a comprehensive linguistic record for a community based upon their linguistic practices and traditions. The benefits of language documentation can be described as twofold in terms of the academic and community output that they produce. The Ende Language Project has produced a large amount of both academic and community resources. However, one of the most notable aspects of the project is that it decisively emphasizes the speaker's desire to document and share their language outside of the immediate community, as well as to promote local resources and literacy efforts within the local community. This included a large amount of input from the community in shaping the corpus design, giving them the opportunity to train in linguistic and analytical skills as a means of supporting community collaboration throughout the process of documenting and corpus building. In terms of the academic output, the Ende Language Project has produced multiple scholarly works as a result of data collection, among them being a theoretical description of Pahatory River languages, a grammar sketch of Ende, and an Ende English lexicon. Most notably, the amount of data collected constitutes a high quantity that has been archived and made available to multiple user groups, including 876 linguistic items, 577 .wav files, 8,282 .jpeg files, 20 notebooks, 7 handcrafted books, 454 transcribed items, 334 translations, and 112 interlinearizations. Much of this data has also been deposited in Paradisec. Storing the data in an online archive allows interested users to easily find and access the collection, as well as easily download items directly from the website without needing to purchase any additional software. In addition to the open access data available, private access data is located in supplementary Microsoft XLS spreadsheets and is organized hierarchically and is systematically linked with any raw data or background information that is not included in the archive. Linguistics, alongside outputting resources that are beneficial for the linguistic community, shares an equal responsibility to create resources that are favorable to the speaker community. The current community output of this project includes a diverse set of linguistic materials that are meant to promote literacy within the community and which serve as a physical representation of the corpus. These materials are included as items in the online corpus, but were also reformatted in various ways that better fit the needs of the community. The songs in the corpus were returned as a physical hymnal, while selected narratives were organized into physical storybooks that were illustrated by community members. The corpus also includes a collection of interviews that document Ende life before and after the community's conversion to Christianity in the 1960s. Each of these items serve as visual representations of the corpus that were left for the community. Figure 6 shows two Ende books illustrated by community members Pepe Peba and Ende Ekotut Peba. Figure 7 shows the Ende documentary Light into the Ende Tribe, while Figure 8 shows the cover of an Ende hymnal. The field of language documentation is not without its shortcomings, however, as the creation of language archives and language corpora is a practice that is better suited to serve some communities over others. Because linguists have been at the forefront of creating such archives, they have done so with a focus centered primarily on linguists as the main user groups. In practice, archives may not be entirely helpful to linguists in collecting and assessing linguistic data, in part due to the amount of time that is required to search through records in order to find data that is relevant to their search. It is also the case that language archives are built to fit a specific model, and that they may therefore be less likely to be user-centered for language communities, making them somewhat useless for speakers. The Ende Language Project sought to overcome both of these obstacles by creating a corpus that is fit to serve both communities. With respect to the academic community, linguists are often discouraged from using language archives as sources for linguistic data because of the lack of ability to easily find and access data. With respect to the local community, online archiving often emphasizes catering to communities with a stable internet access and technological accessibility. The Ende Language Project has taken measures to overcome both of these barriers to documentation. There is often a gap between the amount of material recorded during the collection process and the amount of data that is later transcribed, translated, and deposited into the archive. This makes the resulting corpus a reflection of only a small amount of the data that was collected and decreases the likelihood that linguists are able to ask and answer specific research questions. Our corpus aims to overcome this by creating a well-curated archive that provides a large amount of linguistic data and is easily accessible by multiple user groups, and is deposited in an online archive that ensures the safeguarding of linguistic data. While language archives are well suited to serve academic researchers and linguists by providing an easily accessible and well-organized collection of data, such as recordings, transcriptions, and translations, this does not do well to serve communities who might lack stable internet access and ultimately creates a barrier for language use. A fundamental part of language documentation and the creation of language archives is identifying which groups are using the technology and which groups are most likely to benefit from it. The Ende community is among the groups with an extremely limited access to the internet, making online archives less friendly for most of the speakers. Thus, in order for an archive to serve these communities, it's imperative that speakers be able to actively participate in the data collection process. The Ende Language Project made sure to involve native speakers in data collection, which gave them a greater voice in how they wanted the corpus to be represented and which materials would be most beneficial for the community as a whole. To conclude, the field of language documentation encompasses a variety of techniques to create samples of language through documentation, among them being the creation of language archives. Archiving data of under-researched languages makes it readily available for a variety of audiences and ensures that linguistic and cultural records are preserved. However, online archives by nature are fit to serve communities with a stable internet connection and are largely built to serve academic communities, limiting their availability and worth for speakers. The Ende Language Project prioritized both the academic and speaker communities by using innovative methods that would benefit each group in ways best fit for its users. Specifically, it highlighted the local community and made sure that community members were instrumental in the data collection process and the building of the archive. As the corpus continues to grow, it is able to be updated over time and reflect the more modern nuances of Ende language and culture. These are my sources. Thank you for listening to our talk, and we look forward to your questions.